During the past week, we held the Tasmanian Catholic Youth Festival in both the north and south of the state. The festival had two components. There was sessions for high school students, which were conducted during the day, and then there was an evening event. There's one here in the Cathedral and there's one up at Church of the Apostles in Launceston. The theme that was chosen for this youth festival this year was taken from Pope Francis's Apostolic Exhortation to young people, which he wrote in 2019. And it's the Pope's words where he says, "You are alive, fall in love." These words form the key to the theme of the Catholic Youth Festival. The students then were invited to consider what they have fallen in love with, and to reflect upon how loving something seizes their imagination and becomes a focus and an inspiration to their life. They were then led to consider what is the ultimate source of love. Pope Francis, in his exhortation to young people, said, "The very first truth I would like to tell each of you is this: God loves you." He then added, "It makes no difference whether you have already heard it or not. I want to remind you of it. God loves you." Now, we're very familiar, of course, with this declaration that God loves us. We've heard it probably many, many times. And because we've heard it so often, it's easy for it to lose its potency. While we obviously don't deny its truth, it can be easily passed over as a simple truism. Yet when experienced in a deeply personal way, this truth is absolutely life-changing. For young people, this declaration is an invitation to experience the reality of God's love for them. Through a stirring talk by internationally acclaimed singer and songwriter Father Rob Galea from the Sandhurst Diocese, through some wonderful testimonies by young people, through prayer and music. The young people during the festival were invited and encouraged to open their hearts to the love of God. Because this Christian proclamation of the love of God for each person only comes alive when it is experienced. This youth festival and its theme caused me to look back on my own life and to reflect upon my own experience of the love of God. I looked over my life and considered particular moments when the love of God for me was something which was experienced intimately and tangibly. I could identify a number of quite significant moments, with one in particular being a very powerful turning point in my life. And I shared this with the young people. God loves us. No doubt each one of us here can share their own story of how they have experienced His love in their life. And I think reflecting upon our own experience, we can also see how this love has touched us and indeed has shaped our life. Because love to be real is something that needs to be felt and experienced. And when this happens, we are wonderfully changed. This weekend, the gospel which we just listened to takes up this particular theme. And so we heard at the very beginning of the gospel today, Jesus saying to his disciples, "As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you." I'm sure with these words of the disciples would have been able to reflect upon their own experience of the love of God which was mediated to them through Christ. I'm sure they had no doubt from their experience that Christ did love each one of them individually, personally. I'm sure they can immediately too think of moments where they themselves tasted his love in a very particular and personal way. These words of Christ may have stimulated for them their own appreciation of how important and indeed life-changing their exposure to the love of Christ for them has been for their life. Certainly one person who never tired of speaking about this was St. John, and we heard it very beautifully spoken about in the second reading today. St. John just simply says, God is love. He knew that. He experienced that. He said, this is someone we've touched, we've seen, we've felt. Someone who has transformed our lives. Then Jesus in the Gospel this morning simply added, remain in my love. So he invites his disciples to stay always within the ambit of his love. And encouraged his disciples to be conscious that this love is always there for them. And this is also something we can consider ourselves as well. It's like standing in the sunlight on a cold day, a little bit of coolness in the air today, isn't there, with the wind blowing and so on. So when we stand in the sun out of the wind, we feel the warmth of the sun penetrating right into our bones. And we can feel too the comfort of light that radiates to us from the sun. And in this sunlight too, we're able to see things so much more clearly and distinctly. But then when we move into the shadows, and particularly if the wind begins to blow a little, things change, don't they? We immediately sense the loss of warmth and the loss of light. And shadows can prevent us from seeing things as clearly and sharply as we did before. Remain in my love means to remain in the sunlight and to let that sunlight penetrate and warm you through the depths of your being. Today is Mother's Day, as we mentioned at the beginning of Mass, and I think every Mother's Day we do think of, obviously, about our mothers, but we notice when the culture does it, and you see it in the newspapers and in the media in various ways, the predominant theme of Mother's Day really is that reflection and appreciation of the love that mothers have for their children. And so we think of our own mother's love for us with gratitude. And we know that we've been loved. We've tasted and experienced that love in various ways. And you know, our mother's love is so absolutely critical, particularly to the earliest growth of a child, a baby. And to grow up knowing that we are loved provides a sense of security and of worth and of assurance. But Francis, in his exhortation to young people, quotes a text from the prophet Isaiah. Does a woman forget her baby at the breast, or fail to cherish the son of her womb? But even if these forget, I will never forget you. They're stirring words, aren't they? God will never forget us. His love is absolutely sure and constant. But Francis also quotes again from the prophet Isaiah another passage which says, "See, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hand." I suppose this is like the person who has the name of their beloved tattooed on their body. Not that I'm recommending that at all, but people do it. That's what the Lord has done, Isaiah is saying. And what this declares is that God has this personal love for each individual, for each of us. God personally loves us. Surely this is one of the great revolutionary declarations of our faith. God is not a distant, uninterested or uninvolved being in the heavens. God does take a personal interest in each one of us. Wherever we are at, whatever is happening to our lives, be they good or bad, God's love is there. Like the sun, constant, steady and sustaining. So the message is very clear. We are loved by God. We are loved personally, intimately. Perhaps today we can take a moment to reflect upon our own experience of the love of God. To remember those moments when that love came through to us, touched us, healed and freed and encouraged us. Moments when we knew it's true, absolutely true. And those words of Jesus to his disciples state a fact and not a theory. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you.